Yomani, late. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, the Mai Pedig Vav, Halacha Zayin, and Halacha Ches. We're going to begin. We're learning today Daf Samach Gimel, but we'll begin on Daf Samach Beis Amid Beis. We're going to have these very unusual pieces of Agadata here in the Yerushalmi. We're going to have a story with Onkelos, who's really called Achilles. I don't know if the Goyish's Achilles is the same one, but Achilles, which is Onkelos, became a convert. The Gemara, I think, in Bavli Avodah Zarah Yud Aleph, shares a lot about that process and how his uncle tried to get him back. And whoever was sent, Onkelos got them also to join the Jewish people. We're going to see in our Gemara how Onkelos went beyond the letter of the rule that we learned in the Mishnah, as we'll review when we learn it inside. The Gemara later on Daf Samach Gimel is going to focus on the case in the Mishnah that when you have an Amoritz who's selling produce in Syria, and we already know that this Amoritz owns his own field, and as we explain, therefore, if he would have said nothing, we would have presumed that what he's selling came from his field. If he goes ahead and he says that the produce that he's selling is a tithe, we don't believe him. And we will have to take off the demai separations. In contrast, if you have a person, a yid, an amaret, selling produce in demai, but if we don't know that he owns land, so then the presumption is when someone sells something, business, he bought it and he sold it. Most of the lands in Syria belongs to Goyim. We already said that according to all opinions, in Syria, yesh kinyan la'akum lahafkiya min hamaistas, which would mean that if it grew on land owning to a Goy, there is no obligation b'chlal to tithe it. And even if he says, I bought it from a Jew, but I tithed it, there will say, hapesha asad, hapesha hitet. We're going to have some very important rules, b'negeya the ne'emanus, halachic ne'emanus of a Goy. Right, we'll introduce at least a little bit the concept of Masiach Lifi Tumai. And finally, we're going to learn the final Pedic, the final Mishnah in this Pedic, by Halacha Ches, that's going to be speaking about transferring the Mai to an Amoritz. The case will be if you have an Amoritz who asked the Chaver, can you please buy produce for me? So the Chaver is a Shliach of the Amoritz. The Chaver buys produce from a vendor who is an Amoritz. Normally, if a Chaver buys produce from a Amoritz, he has to separate the Demai separations. But he didn't buy it for himself. So if we were to view that act of it's his, and then he's giving it over to the Mishaleach, he would have to separate the Demai separations. But if we view him as Pashat Shliach, meaning it was never his, it's going from the seller, the Amoritz, to the Mishaleach, who is the buyer, Vaiter an Amoritz. The Chaver has no such responsibility to separate the Demai separations. That will be the topic of the Mishnah. And as we'll see how much time we have, if we'll get into the Gemara is going to quote the Machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. The same topic regarding the Amoritz was asking a Chaver to buy produce from an Amoritz. In the Mishnah, there is no Machlokes brought down, but in the Gemara, we'll bring down this Machlokes Tanoim, and the words will be Halokeach Stam Eino Tzarech La'aseh Divrei Rabbi Yossi. We'll see how the Gemara is going to show us that our Mishnah, Stam Mishnah, follows Rabbi Yossi. But Rabbi Yehuda Omer, yes, Tzarech La'aseh. This is more or less today's daf. And Chevra, let's go right away to Daf Samach Beis Amid Beis. We are 6 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Beginning of the line. Okay. So what are we coming off? We're coming off, Simcha, that if you have a Goy who passed away, and he has sons, and one of his sons became a Ger before, and the sons, the brothers, are dividing the estate. Some of the estate is Avodah Zarah, Yayin Nesach, meaning items that are Asur Bahano'am, which means the Ger cannot use it to exchange and to receive something of its value for him because he's benefiting from the Avodah Zarah. The Mishnah ruled that the ger has no such issue because since Yerusha from a ger, from his father, the goy is only the Rabbanan, he never owned it. If he never owned it, it was never his. He's not exchanging it. It's not called an exchange. That is the halach in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara story that Akilos, Hager, and just for the record, if you can look in the Marafulda, I know it's almost the middle of the Amid, right? Akilos says the Marafulda, who Unkelis, the one shechiber atargum ala Torah. Just the awesomeness of it. If someone were to ask you, what was the first Jewish sefer written, kalacha, on the Torah, which is not part of Tanakh, what was the first Jewish sefer? The right answer would be the first one was the Targum Shivim, which was considered the calamity. We actually fast for that. When one of the kings in Egypt, Talmud is the generic name, forced, whether it was 70 or 71, Chachamim to translate the Torah into Greek, right? And the Asara B'Tevis fast day is also marking that calamity, mamish. But that was not a good thing. What was the first sefer? If I'm not mistaken, it was this. It was Onkelos. It's quite amazing. Maybe there were other. I mean, everyone. They all had their own notes that they wrote to themselves. I'm talking about a bona fide sefer. You know what? I take that back. I think the first sefer afterwards was Targum Yonas and Ben Uziel. That was before that. But this is from the earliest writings of Torah. You can say Torah Shabbal Peh because it's a translation. That look how important it is, and it all came from this Akilos. So Akilos Ager Chiluk Echad, and he, even though he knew the Mishnah, he went beyond the letter of the law. The Hechmer al Atzmoi v'Hoylechano leYamamelach. He got rid of the Hana that he got from there was some Avodah Zarah that his father had. Obviously, he didn't take it, as we'll see in a moment. But he had no benefit from it. Now, really, the Gemara says 3 opinions of what he did. Whatever he did, it was a chumrah beyond the letter of the law. And the Gemara says, Tulasa Amoirin. In other words, there were 3 Amoiraim, each one opined, epis different. Chad Amar, the Mei Avodah Zarah Hoylech Liyamamelech. The Mei Avodah Zarah was, let's say the Avodah Zarah was worth $1. The idol, the getchka. So his brother kept the idol. He got in its place, he got $1 from the state. He took the $1, which values the whole Avodah Zarah, and he threw it into the Yam HaMelech. Now that's a huge chumrah. I'll tell you why is it a huge chumrah. Because Onkelos never even owned all of it. Let's say there were 2 brothers. Each one, let's say, owns half. Whatever the percent is. That means max, he owned half. Or if there were 3 brothers, a third. So one opinion is he threw the whole value of the Avodah Zarah. No. That was already too much, even beyond. The Meichelkoi shel Avodah Zarah HaMelech. The Meichelkoi, I know the Marafulda brings 2 opinions, but the latter one, which is 5 lines for the bottom, the Meichelkoi hainu chatzi lefi shelo yigia lo mitchila ela hachatzi mimenu. In other words, let's say there were 2 brothers. He only owned half of it. So even though he needed to throw nothing of its value away, if you want to be machmer by the value that you had. You got it? And then listen to the third one. The third one is like, wow. Like, wow, in other words, what he did was, when his brothers were making the exchange, he actually took the Avodah Zarah, not got rid of it to keep it. That means that, let's say that Avodah Zarah worth $1, there were 2 brothers. So the other brother it means that he owned 50 cents in it. The brother, the goy, got 50 cents. He took the Avodah Zarah. He right away threw it into the Yam HaMelech. And why did he do that? He did that not because he needed to throw it all away, because he never even owned the whole thing. He only owned half. He did it like Miftzayim. He didn't want for his brother to have Avodah Zarah in his house. Ela b'shvil akal Avodah Zarah mi beis Abba. How beautiful is that?
That's not stealing. I know it's Avodah Zarah.
No, his brother got paid for it.
Oh, they got it right.
Yeah, the brother. In other words,
I thought they didn't get fully paid for it.
You always think the exchange is the guy is going to keep the yain nesach, the guy is going to keep the Avodah Zarah. No, the opposite. Onkelos kept it.
No, but then he owned it from
No. So the pshat is that he took it. No, if he would have took it to own it, you're not allowed to do that. There's a video everyone sees that there was a missionary, Neba Chayid, a Jew that got a sick Jew, a Jew for Jesus, and he gave the Rebbe his brochures. And when the Rebbe took it, like this story, the Rebbe said to him, I'm taking it. I think, first of all, I think the Rebbe threw it on the ground. But there was a moment that the Rebbe took it. The Rebbe took it by telling him that you'll have one thing less to give out to a Yid. That's a mitzvah to do. That's mamish the story. By the Rebbe, it was to save another Jew. By the way, that Jew got straightened out. There's a beautiful follow-up to it. But here, it was a brother. Just to know another thing, are Jews mechuyev and lifnei evil by goyim? I want to say that yes, there's a whole sugya about this. But even if not, it's not about an obligation of lifnei evil. A brother, he didn't want for his brother to be involved in avodah zarah. That's why I refer back to avodah zarah, Daf Yud Aleph in Bavli, where Onkelos had this koyach to get people around him to become Yidden. Right, that was the whole story with the mezuzah at the end. He put his hand in the mezuzah first. He interacted with them. He convinced them. Then they were told, "Don't even talk to him." Didn't talk to him. He did not begin the conversation. Whoever they sent to get him back became converts. So that's Onkelos. So he took that. That's part of his emo. Okay. All right, Cheder, I know that some people have the Gersois Halacha Ches. It's absolutely not that. All right, Halacha Ches, which is the final mission, will be on Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis. But now we're simply going to focus on the Hapesh Asar Hapesh Hitir. But like we mentioned, if the Amaretz, who's in Syria, who's selling produce, is already independently known to own land, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more today. And in the case where we presume you're selling produce, your own land, it came from your land, that means we know independently that it grew in a land owned by a Jew, and this person who's selling it, the owner of the land and the seller, the same one as an Amaretz, even though he's saying, I took of all of the Trumis or Maisres, he's an Amaretz, he has no Nemanos, and the buyer has to separate the my separations. Says the Gemara, Tanan, Taninon, and we're quoting a Mishnah in Masechtas Peah, in the pagination that we have, and Daf Samach Ches Amud Beis, says the Mishnah that Nemanim, we're speaking about a poor Am Haaretz who has produce, who was saying that he got the produce from the Matnas Aniyim, whether it came from Leket, whether it came from Shikha, whether it came from Peah. Says the Mishnah, Bishaton means as long as he has the produce at the time of the year, that whatever it is that he's saying it is from, it fits the Mitzias. Don't forget, guys, Leket is not available the whole year, right? Simcha, Leket is available only when people are harvesting their fields. Or if a person is saying that it's a Peah. Yeah, Peah is only available when you're harvesting your fields. As long as what he's saying is independently Shaykh, it's not a stretch. He's saying, I got it 4 months ago and I preserved it. If it's during the time where there's like a Shikha Peah, he's believed. Now, guys, remember something. Going back to the last Masechta. Leket, Shikha Peah, Matnas Aniyim is exempt from being tithe b'chlal. So if it would have been produce that has to be tithe, and the Amaretz is saying it is tithe, that's the holding of the Mai. We don't believe him fully. But he's neman to say it's Leket. But derech memela, what's going to happen? You don't have to do anything. Okay. So the Gemara is saying, hold on, over there, he has nemanus. That's the way we're going to learn. We're going to learn this as a kasha. Bikmiya, look inside the Pnei Moshe, top Pnei Moshe. The second Pnei Moshe on top of the line. Oh, so the Gemara is saying that Pnei Moshe is saying that Sefer the Masnisaru the Parach. This is the kasha. That the Mishnah says, as we just quoted, that if the Biyadua, if it is known, Sheyesh saw the Achas Besuria, and he's selling produce, and he's saying it's Mu'usar, in other words, we don't believe him. Then the Emonim Loimer Zeh Shalek and Shikhopeya, Kishuhu Bishaton, and Bederach Memela, the person who's buying it off the Ani, right? The first narrow line in the Pnei Moshe, Uputunami Maisis. You know, why is that? How do you know that it's from Leket? Maybe this guy, maybe this person bought it from normal produce, Tevel. Maybe he has Tevel. Now, I know the answer. First of all, just to know for the record, the Gemara is just opening this up as a kasha. We already mentioned so many times that there is nemanos to an amaretz. We believe in amaretz. We only don't believe in when it comes to trumos umaisis. But the point the Gemara is going to make, which is what we spoke about in the Mishnah, is what would we have thought if he would have said nothing? Because we're trying to use the logic of hapesha asher hapesha hited, migu, same concept. That will be the big difference. Says the Gemara, come on over there. Now I know that there are different girsas. Since we're learning the Pnei Moshe, I'm just saying that the girsa and the Pnei Moshe is shetiknoi. But I want you to know that the Pnei Moshe himself, even though he has the girsa, shetiknoi, tiknoi means normally to rectify. Over here means if he would have been silent. Other people, lachatchila, have the girsa shtikasai. So whichever way you read it, it's going to mean the same thing. Taman means there. There means in peya. Over there, shtikasei pater. Even if he would have said nothing, we don't need to rely on him at all. Says the Pnei Moshe, Taman, 7 lines from the top. Taman shetikonoi pater loidame. The Hasam shetikonoi pater. What does the word shetikone mean? So he says, Kloimet, shtika shaloi. Shetikone, you mean shtika. Kisha eino emer klum. If the ani would have said nothing, if you go over to an ani, bishaton means during the times that aniyim just received their leket shikon pei. So then you wouldn't have to separate anything. Why? Charei leket shikon pei p'turim and amaises. Ubishaton. Bishaton means during that time of the year. Talinon, we on our own would already halachically assume the mashahu b'yad aniyim b'stama mimatnei seyami. And therefore, loy olav bilvad on usoimchem. Elo de samchinan achazaka v'cheskas piturin. The fact that he is saying what we would have assumed anyway, even better. He's saying something that we would have said on our own. His statement doesn't make it worse, but we're not soymech on a statement. But over here, and let's go with the same nusach of the same gears of the Pnei Moshe, shetikunai, which would mean his silence is chayev, like we mentioned, that when a person is known independently to own a field, that's the key. And he's selling produce that actually grows on his field. Is it possible that he bought it from a goyish field? Yes. But if he would have said nothing, since the chazaka is it's coming from his field without his words, so now we have a problem. Ella, he's saying he took off mice. He's an amaretz. We don't believe him. That's why we're chayv. And the Gemara says, and indeed, the Tani came. There's a brayso that actually uses these words. Now again, let's read the other girsa. Whenever his silence would have exempted the produce from the obligation of giving off any types of trumas or maises by default, and he's telling you a story, and his story is backing up what we would have come to on our own anyway, then Nemon, and that's very key, the girsa here, afla hakel, okay? And that will be the application of the case that we just said, that when the ani is saying, this is leket, he's making a kula. You don't have to do anything. We believe him. However, let's not go with Biram Hachem. Shetikasai lahachmed, if his silence, without him saying anything, would have resulted in us following the chazaka, and in a case where following the chazaka would bring upon us a chumrah, like our case over here, you buy produce from an amaretz in Syria that's known to own land growing this produce. Then you have to presume it came from his land. But now he's being mefadish something. He's saying, in our case, I took up the mices. His words should bring upon a leniency. That's the case when we know he owns the land. Okay, simple. Now, I want you to know that what's happening over here, this whole sugya, for people that remember, that's mamish, the end of the Masechta Yevamos, what we're going to be learning right now in Babel. Mamish over here. That's going to be over here. Exactly. And same thing over there. And there's, I'll speak out the kids of Machlokes Rashi Tosfos, that's brought down a little bit here in the Marafuda. Chanim learned in a brayz. Goy shoy tzeveach va'omer. The goy shoy tzeveach va'omer simcha is the minig when people sell. You have to know how to sell. How do you sell? You have to attract clients. So you have to market. That's the marketing. So once a goy, lahavdala yid also makes no difference. In this case, you'll see why it's a goy. When a seller is shouting something, and what he's shouting makes his produce sound more of greater quality, more attractive. He's shouting something to give more value in his chayda. That in itself takes away his namanus. Now look over here. You see the package? That's what it is. Not don't judge a book from its cover. You see the cover? The book is mustama the opposite. That's the best way of doing it. That bo utulu lochemi meru. He says, come and buy. Utulu doesn't mean to take. He's not giving out matanis. Come and buy from me. You know what I have? Either, he says, Pedek Ozekain. Now, here's the big challenge with the Pedek Ozek. So just for the record, that the Maraful that brings from Rashi, what he brings from Rashi is Rashi and Tosfos, and Rashi over there later has another opinion. Either Ozek means that it came from a guarded field. So we're talking about Shemitah year, and Shemitah year, everyone has the rights to go into everyone else's fields, which means everything is handled. Like when you go into a store, it's not in a box. It's a apple. You don't want 100 people to have touched it before. So the problem in the Shemitah year is that everyone is touching everyone else's fruits on the tree to see when they want to pluck it or not pluck it. Ozek means that this field was fenced off. No one was allowed in. Well, that's a problem. On Shemitah, we're not allowed to fence off our fields. So he's saying Pedek Ozek to say that's one way. This produce no one touched before. It's good. Problem is through his statement, unbeknownst to him, he's making it worse. Why? Because he's saying that the owner of the field did not allow other people to enter the field on Shemitah. Problem with this Perush is that even if someone violates that part of Shemitah and they don't allow other people to go into the field, the fruits themselves do not become usher to be eaten. That's the issue we learned in Yavamas. Okay? So just to say another Perush, and the other Perush is that Ozek is a city in Eretz Yisrael. It's another way of understanding this whole case. The Goy is selling produce b'chutz la'aretz, where b'chlal there's no concern of trumas u'maisris, because yesh king and Goy, even if it's in Syria, it's not in Israel. You have no problem. Ozek was a city in Eretz Yisrael that produced great fruits. Yafa oranges, l'mashal. That's not good. You're telling me it's made in Israel. That was the problem. In other words, whatever it means, without him opening up his mouth, there would be no problem you buying it and eating it. He opened up his mouth to tell you how wonderful his fruits are. And that created the problem. Or Peiros Arlahain. Or Peiros Netrivoyhain. The same idea. What's Peiros Netrivoy? That what he means is it's a brand new tree. It's brand new, it's fresh. Just the first few years was wasted. You should know the emes is that aside of the Dinei Torah, it takes a couple of years for the tree to begin to produce better fruits. It's like the klipa of youth in America. The older the person, the greater, whatever they do better. A younger person, Simcha is not exactly agreeing with me. Point is, the same thing. He said something that in the Goyish mind, he thinks that he's speaking up the product. The Jewish hears it, says, oh my God, it's Arla. So you know what the din is? Look at Ein Loy Nemon, which is mamish wonderful. Ein Loy Nemon. The Goy is not believed. How great is that? Look inside, let's go with that Asherilio. On the left column, 6 lines before the bottom. Meaning, since says that the loin is chaven elo lahashbiach mikcha, he's trying to speak up the quality of his product. And v'hachim is sayim lohasam apedig basra the yavamois. So look how great that is. Simcha, that means that I can buy it and eat it.
It's not the opposite of what we just said before.
No, it's that without him saying anything, there would be no issue. We're not saying that we don't believe him at all. That's very important. We're saying that since his statement was in order to be mashbiach, his mekach, that's when you don't believe him. In other words, we're beginning with the presumption that anything that you say when you're selling merchandise about the greatness of your product, to begin with, don't believe the guy. Because this guy, what the guy is really saying is, please buy from me. That's all he's saying. I need to make a living. Now, im amar migoy pleni ha besim. Now here we have two opinions. If he made a statement that does not appear to speak up his product, he's just giving you information, some information. He's making a statement that doesn't affect the buyer's desire or lack of desire to buy. It came from Indonesia, it came from China. To me, it makes no difference. He's still offering information. Oh, so now there is some nemanus. He only loses the nemanus when he's saying something to market. If there's no marketing value in a statement, this is the words of Rabbi. Neman, not always fully. Neman lahachmer. What was that? It's mamish gavaldik. Okay, and just for the record, like in our case, if a statement, because of what he said, it's Shemitah, right? We know that goy's produce is Shemitah produce. Just an example. We know that goy's produce is Arla produce. He didn't. We believe a statement, and since now that we know it came from that goy, now we know there's a problem, he'll be Neman. Neman lahach. Okay? He won't be Neman lahakel. Let's say the question is whether it grew in land belonging to a Yid or whether it grew in land belonging to a Goy. Right in Surya. He says, Migoy Ploini, that's a Goy. So therefore it should be Potem in Maisers. For that he's not Neman. But we're not saying that he's Neman. We're not saying he's only not Neman when it's for marketing. We're saying that if it's not Megeya to the product, he's Neman only lahachma. So there is Nemanus lahachma. Divrei Rebbe. And that's the way we pass him. We're going to get in a moment. No, I disagree with that. He won't even be Neman lahachmer. Wawi. I feel lahachmer and a Neman. And now, guys, I know that there's so many different ways of learning this Gemara. You have no idea. Like minakatza lakatza. We're going to follow one mahalach. Very different. So Rabbi Yudan boy. Take out the word Zajac. That's the key. He's asking, what happens if he's Masiach Lefi Tumai? What is the definition, guys, of Masiach Lefi Tumai? The Pnei Moshe says Gavaldik. Any statement that he makes, that's the word Zajac. And he takes out the word Zajac. If he's shouting, that's called, he's saying it b'negei deseh. That's already not Masiach Lefi Tumai. So either you take out the word Zajac, that is what makes it Masiach Lefi Tumai. It's not what he's putting on the packaging. It's not what he's shouting. He mentioned it b'derech hagav. Or, since the Pnei Moshe has the word Zajac, so how can Zajac be not Masiach Lefi Tumai? He says, if he's not saying, buy it from me,
that's what got him frustrated.
The problem is he's not saying, buy it from me, because he wants you to buy it from him. He doesn't want you to know that you're trying to market it at the kasha. But the way the Pnei Moshe's problem is that he had the word Zajac. He has to somehow fix. How do you fit Masiach Lefi with Zajac? So look inside the Pnei Moshe, 5 lines on the bottom. So the way he learns it, Rabbi Yudan is asking, we passing like a chachamim. Divrei hagoy halachically when it comes to testifying. Not even lahachmer. So that's one way. So he wants to know, okay, that is maybe when he's marketing, even though he said it came from that guy, even though it's not directly connected, but it's part. What happens if it's Masiach Lefi Tumai? Question. The problem with this question is that it should be a pshita that a guy is believed when he's Masiach Lefi Tumai. He is believed, and therefore, because of like what's even his kasha, that kasha on the kasha will create a whole different way of learning the next piece of the Gemara, but it's going to get more complicated. We're going to follow the way whoever's using an art scroll, we're going to follow the way the art scroll learns. All right, what we're learning now is not the way the Pnei Moshe learns at all. And this kasha remains unanswered. And now he's asking another kasha. But the second question will be answered. And Abiyudan boy, nocha kasha, that kuti kigoi question mark. Now that we established that what? that divrei hagoy halachically lo'maylam lo'meridin. What will be the din of a kuti? And we're speaking specifically not about this is in the times where the kuti was still considered a Jew. This was in the times that a kuti for himself, other than what we knew he doesn't keep, was presumed to keep the halachis, right? Like we have in Chulin, right? He would shecht for himself. But since the kutim had no problem selling treif to a yid, all right? So he's not nemon because he might be giving us a product that's problematic. The kuti, when he's selling it, chevre, he's saying that what? He's saying it's arla. What do we do with the kuti? That's a new question that the Gemara is asking, and this question will be answered. Turning to the Samach Gimel on the base. So the Gemara says that actually that's a machlekes. The ispalgon between who? Between Rabbi and Ashbag. Kuti kegoy divrei Rabbi. Now, just guys, remember Rabbi, right? We just had, what does Rabbi say by a goy? He's nemon lahachma. Remember that. When is a goy b'chlal not nemon? When his statement is concerning to be mashbiach, when he's trying to sell a product. That's when there's no nemonos. If it's not going to sell his nemonos, nemon lahachma. And a kuti has the same thing. However, I'm sure making the again, now look, minakotza lakotza. See how the girsois are confusing? We're going to go with the girsa. Ki Yisrael l'chol davar. Yuvaldik. Now, what's the din of a Yisrael? Let's go to an Amoritz. Same thing. We'll believe him. For sure, we'll believe him. Lahachma. I mean, no doubt about that.
Same.
What was that?
It's the same in this case.
If he's, it's for sure. Was if a kuti saying that this is arla, or let's go in the case where it's atzek. Atzek means that it's, let's go with that other opinion, that it's, you're selling it b'chutz la'aretz. But he's telling you this came from there, for sure he's them. No doubt about it. Okay. And again, the Gemara is going back to this ending of the Mishnah that differentiates whether it's independently Yodua or not. If it's not independently Yodua, since most lands in Syria belong to Goyim, even if the seller is a Yid, so what? That's what people do business. You buy and you sell. Doesn't mean you made it. Doesn't mean you grew it. So if he says, I bought it from a Yid and I was ma'asid it, Ne'emon, right? And if you do so then he's not Ne'emon, because an Amoritz is not Ne'emon, and the buyer will have to separate the Demai separation. Says the Gemara, let me add another nuance to that. Let me ask you a question. If a Yid, Simcha, has a little piece of land, how much produce can grow from this land? 2 pounds of potatoes. And he's selling 100 boxes of potatoes. We're not going to say that. Let's just clarify that. So where do we draw the line? So it says the Gemara, that when do we say that if it's Yodua that he owns land, then we presume whatever he's selling came from him? If it's also Yodua that the majority of what he sells or goes after Roy, let's say his land has the capacity to grow 10 pounds. And even if this guy is selling 15 pounds, which means some he must have bought from other people, which then we will presume the other came from Goyim, Roiv HaGoyim. As long as Roiv is shaykh to grow on his land, then we have to be machmer. Look inside the top of our folder. That ve'im yadua sheyesh lekarka b'Surya. But that's not enough. No, you have to add. Most of what he sells is that which grows. Then you understand? It's important. Okay, back over here. Says the Gemara, Yisrael shoyalei aris b'Surya, and the shilach loy pedes. Shilach loy pedes is in the direction that the sharecropper send produce to the landowner. Now, there's one little technical detail that we're going to learn here when we learn the sugya, and so so explains the Gra. There's so many different ways of explaining it, that an artist, you think an artist has a percent, right, Simcha? He still will never take that part of the produce that belongs to him without having the knowledge of the owner. So let's say you own the land and I'm your sharecropper, and the deal is at the end of the season, I get to keep 50%. I never took 50% without your knowledge that I'm doing it. That's very important. Okay, so now such a Jew, such a sharecropper, send produce to the landowner. And he tells him, says the Gemara, now what are we going to presume? Does this Yisrael own land? No, but he's an Aris. What's an Aris? He has rights. The rights that he has to the field that belongs to a Jew, those fruits have to be tithed midrabanan. Peder Surya have to be tithed. And when he says it's Mosarim, he's not Neman, he's an Amaretz. But you know what we believe? We believe he would not have taken produce from that field without the das of the balabas. That's not the way it worked. And therefore, when he sells produce, we assume he bought it from the market. When you buy something in the market in Surya, Roiv are goyim. Just like we just said that even if I own land, I own land. But if what I'm selling, Roiv, did not come from the land, doesn't matter. I will be Neman, Apesha Apesha, same similar thing. So even though this Jew is a sharecropper and therefore he has rights to some produce that grew in the land of a Yid, he didn't say where he got it from. He just sent produce. So says the Gemara, Ani oimer min ashuk laka. Look inside the Bior Hagra, Ksaviav Beis, all the way in the bottom, in the top. Ani oimer min ashuk laka, chvolei chashinon shema lakach min asad shu arisba. Why not? You can say not he owns, but he's a sharecropper because the mistama lo yikach sholem medas balabais. And somehow we know that whatever happened here, the balabas did not know. If he took it sholem medas. That we don't say he did. So we say what? He bought it in the market. So here again says the Gemara back in the Gemara. Obviously. Now. It's not only we say that he bought it in the shuk because he doesn't have it available. That's going back to what the girl says. And the sharecropper is almost like someone who owns land. He has the rights to it. Nevertheless, Mikivin Sho'ois is also Matzi Bashuk. Again, let's add the words of the Biur Hagra. And what a person doesn't, I'm going with that mahala of the Gra. A sharecropper, even though he knows that part is his, he doesn't take it without the das of the balabas. And as long as I know the balabas would not have known for him to take it, I don't say that he took it. I say that he bought it mashuk. It's like today, partners. Many people works that way. Then you are partners. Sometimes there's an agreement. No one makes a withdrawal without notifying the other from the bank. Sometimes that's the agreement. Now today you have communication. There was no communication the way we have today with technology. So the Gemara's point is very similar, that it's not any time you own land, we presume it came from your land. It's not so simple. In this case, we don't make such a presumption. Okay, beautiful. Now, guys, this is the last Mishnah in Pedek Shishi. We are heading towards the end of Masechtas Damai. And the Mishnah is predicated on the rule that we keep on learning, that a chaver is never allowed to transfer produce that's not fully tithed to an Ama'aretz, because the Ama'aretz is not Neman that he'll take over all the tithings, period. B'chlal, you have to tithe anything before it leaves your hands. But especially when a chaver is giving produce to an Ama'aretz, again, the different ways of learning this Mishnah, min hakotza el hakotza. We are going to learn the Mishnah, and therefore subsequently the Gemara, that we're speaking about a Mishaleya who is an Ama'aretz. There is a person Ama'aretz, and he's asking a chaver who's becoming a shliach, please go to the market to buy for me, whether it is fruit, whether it is bread, items that have to be tithed. And the chaver bought it from a vendor who is an Ama'aretz. That will be one of the ways of learning the Mishnah. That will be the only way we will learn it right now. So what's happening? The chaver bought it from an Ama'aretz. The Ama'aretz can say that he took everything off. He's not neman fully. It means if a chaver would buy it for himself, he's chayiv to separate the demai separations. He didn't buy it for himself. He's giving it to the mishaleach. So there's the mishaleach, the shliach, and the vendor. So the din of the Mishnah will be is that the chaver doesn't have any obligation. Now, I want to add something that will become clear. What I said now is the simplest case. Let's make things more exciting. The Ama'aretz, the Mishaleach, tells the Chaver, buy me stuff in the market. The Chaver also has to buy stuff for himself in the market. You see, the moment, if the Chaver would have bought something for him, if it would have been specified, this is for me. But it's the same thing. I bought a loaf of bread for me, but when I had in mind, it was for me. And I bought a loaf of bread for the Mishaleach. And now I forgot which one is which. That's a whole different thing. Because if it's possible that what I'm giving to my Mishaleach was something that was mine, even though I'm allowed to make that exchange, I can't make that exchange because now I'm taking something that I owned that is not yet my tithe, and I'm sending it over to an Ama'aretz. I can't do that either. Just want to add that in there, and now let's go inside the Mishnah inside. Ama'aretz. Sh'amar lo chaver. And I know that the chaver means chaver. Chaver, it's not negeya the chaverus, or in Yiddish the chaverus shaft. It's negeya the ne'emonus. So really here it means an eman. Oh, we're not looking into Mantara, and it's okay sometimes to use the word chaver here as well. So he tells the chaver, I'm calling him the shliach. And the Mishaleach, the Ama'aretz, tells the shliach, kachli agudas yerek, buy for me a bundle of vegetables. Or, and kachli geluskin echad, right? Simcha, psachim, geluske yafa, remember that? Remember that? So geluskin echad, buy me a loaf of bread, a Danish, made out of wheat. Also, there's an issue. So the din is that lekeach stam, now the word stam will be huge. Let me already explain you the stam, that even if he's also buying something for him, as long as there was never a specification as which one is mine, which one is for the Mishaleach, that was never said, not by the seller, not by the chaver, that's what the stam will be. It doesn't matter for him to give either one to the Mishaleach. The Mishaleach just told him, buy me. And let me go back to Bereira. We will say Bereira here. Okay? That's one way of learning it. In other words, even though maybe the one that he bought for him was for him, and a chanami. But since no one specified anything, I'm going to tell you the one he ended up giving to the Mishaleach was the one the vendor gave to him. A potter. And look at, so says the Rashirilio. It says the Rashirilio that Am Ha'aretz, you see it, guys, it's in the middle of the right column. The end of the line. I'm Masnisan. Am Ha'aretz Sham Lachavet. So one second. Me the Tani Seifa. Since we didn't read the Seifa yet, but in the Seifa it says Zushali Zushal Chavere. Vinis Arvu Chayev La'aser. Says the Rashirilio, even in the Reish of the Mishnah, it's already the case that we spoke out. It's not that simple. The Mishaleach told the Chaver, buy for me a gluska. There's no chiddush there. Chiddush of the Reish is the Ama'aretz tells the Shliach, buy for me a gluskin. The Shliach bought two, even in the one for him, one for the Mishaleach, but it was stam. No one ever said, not the vendor, not the chaver, ever designated. There was never a moment where this is mine. Let's read it. Mechlal the mighty, even in the ratio. He bought two, not one. And nevertheless, it's okay. Why? Elo the ratio, which is the case that we learned. And if you look down, I push it. It's like, look, 3 lines, just on the column, 3 lines before the bottom. It's going to all boil down to Bereida. Why do we say that? Because we say Yesh Bereida. That's going to be the key over here. Because without Bereida, you'll have a problem.
Rabbi, if he's buying,
what was that?
Sorry, if he's buying it for an Amaharis and he knows the Amaharis is not going to tithe it, he's responsible, isn't he?
No, he's not. So let me say it like this. That's the whole point of shlichus. Minimally, yad shliach kiyad mishaleach. Maximum shliach shaladam kamoisai. So the shliach is transparent. Who bought it? Halachically, the Ama'aretz bought it. The fact that it went through the chaver doesn't count.
How come we never discussed shlichus before? All these transactions we had before. It's the first time.
That's not a kasha.
No, but I'm wondering why. I mean, it seems
We're discussing it now. That's beautiful. That's the Mishnah. Now, however, in contrast, im Omar zu shaliv zu shal chaverai. In other words, this goes not on Ama'aretz. This goes on the chaver. So when the chaver bought it, there was a moment where he says, "This is mine, and this belongs to my friend." And then they got mixed up. Here you can't say Bereida. In other words, there's an exchange. One was already mine. Chayiv la'aser. Ad kedei kach, says the Mishnah, afilu hein shemei. This is a shocking. I mean, it means, you know what that means, guys? He bought one, the Mashalech asked him to buy 100 loaves of bread. He's making a bar mitzvah. And the Chaver bought one. The Mishnah is giving an example because you have bittul b'roy, you have bittul b'shishim. By Truma, this is Maises. By Maises, there's bittul echad b'meya. So what are we saying? We're saying the one that the Chaver bought for himself, he knew it got mixed. Okay, so let's say it would be Truma that got mixed. Should be bottled. We don't say that over here. Why? Because of a rule, guys. What's one of the big rules by bittul? That davar sheyesh loy matir and afilu be'eluf loy bot. In other words, the seller, let me make it clear, the seller in the market was an Amoritz. Halachically, everything has to be tied. The mind. Trumas Meiser, you have to think of everything. It has to happen. No. Will the Mishaleach do it or not? That's his business. Many Amaratzim did it. Don't get it wrong. But since everything has to be tied, and when everything will be tied to the Chal, no issue, so davar sheyesh l'matina afilu be'eluf loy batel. So the din is that the Chaver can only give to the Amoritz the 100 loaves of bread if he takes off those 100 loaves of bread, because each one I can say maybe that's the one that belonged to the Chaver.
Not a good deal.
Huh?
Not a good deal for him.
I don't. No. I don't think it's going to be out of his pocket. No, okay, it won't be out of his pocket.
Okay.
Why would he won't have to pay for it? But he won't be allowed. It's a isur behet that I'm not allowed as a chaver to give over to an amoritz produce that's not fully tied.
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom.